Hello and welcome to everyone that's listening. Today I'm going to be interviewing a budding scriptwriter called Natalie Linford, and I'm going to interview her about all the important things within her job. Hello Natalie.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you too. Now I have a lot of questions for you today, but I'm going to start off with an easy one. What is the actual role of a scriptwriter?
Well, everyone thinks that the role of a scriptwriter is to write the script that the actors then speak and act out, and this is true, but there is also a lot more to it than that. In fact, that is one out of the 4 different scripts that a scriptwriter has to create. The very first thing I have to do as a scriptwriter is to write a treatment for a new film idea. A treatment is a short story explaining all about the characters, the plot, and the ending of the new idea. It is very important that this is done first, as it is a key part of the pitching process, which I'm sure we will talk about later. The next thing a scriptwriter has to do is write the narrative script, which is the one that the actors use. This consists of all the dialogue and a minimal information on the directions. The reason the directions are minimal is because where and what happens on set is up to the director. The key point of the narrative script is the dialogue. The last 2 scripts that a scriptwriter like me will have to write is the shooting script and a shot list. The shooting script consists of all the technical instructions for the camera crew to use. It will talk about when each shot type is needed. Different shots that will be spoken about on the script could be a crane shot, a dolly shot, a pan shot, or many more. And finally, a shot list. This will tell the camera crew all the directions that will happen and when. The shot list has to match up with what is shown on the storyboard, so it is very important that no mistakes are made at this point.
Well, I never knew any of that, so I guess your job is not as easy as everyone thinks.
No, it's definitely not.
In your opinion, what is the most important out of the 4 scripts?
I would probably say the narrative script, because it is the main dialogue for the actors, and without it they wouldn't have anything to say or act. There wouldn't really be a production without it.
Fair enough. Anyway, moving on. What do you need to do within your narrative script in order to be good at your job?
Well, there is no particular way to write a script that automatically makes it good, but I guess the 2 main things you will need to include to make sure it is interesting and effective is firstly, developing the characters. You must always make sure that the main characters have a clear backstory and that what kind of personality they have is made clear throughout the script. This is because otherwise people won't be able to relate or understand the character's purpose and meaning in the script. The second thing I would say is to make sure that it is always clear when you are moving on to the next plot or next action. If it is unclear, then the actors will get confused while acting it, and when it is produced to the viewers, they will get confused. So in my opinion, those are the 2 things that all scriptwriters need to do in order to help make their work good.
What about the overall storyline for all the scripts? Is there anything in the way it's written or the order that it's written that affects how good a scriptwriter can be within a narrative script?
Well, there are 7 key stages throughout a story that crop up in practically every successful movie, and all in the same order as well. So my answer to that question is the order of this script. At the start of the script, you would need to have exposition, then inviting incident, then rising action, then climax, then falling action, then the resolution, and finally the denominant. If you're ever planning to write a script, I would make sure you have scenes within it that cover all of those things and in the exact order that I've just said them in to be successful in your work.
Okay, so for all your wannabe scriptwriters out there, make sure you follow Natalie's advice and write your script including everything that she has mentioned. One thing that I know a lot of people that don't do much about film productions always wonder is what is the difference between a scriptwriter and a script editor?
Both a scriptwriter and an editor are just as important as each other, and one can't work without the other. However, the difference between them is that a scriptwriter typically has the creative task of putting words for a storyline together, while the work of an editor requires a slightly more analytical approach, as they must review, manage, and guide what the scriptwriter has written. So in more simplified terms, one has to be able to create and write, and the other has to edit and finalise what has been written. As I've already said, both jobs are just as important, and both of them actually require a bachelor's degree from university.
Well, I never knew that. Now we understand what your job is and how to do it well. So I'd like to move on to some of the struggles you might face when it comes to legal and ethical issues. Can you tell us what intellectual property is?
Yes, intellectual property is basically the three forms of copyright all bundled into one. Intellectual property is something that is your property and yours alone. You created it and therefore you own it. The laws behind copyright, trademarks and patents help to legally protect your intellectual property.
Please can you explain the difference between the three forms of copyrights that you just mentioned?
Well, first, copyright is the legal term for something that no one can copy as it is your property and yours alone. Copyright laws normally protect creative work like art, books, music, magazines, films and many other things. Whereas a trademark is a symbol or a word that is legally registered or established by repressing a company or business. Finally, patents are government authorised or licensed, and it allows whoever has it to exclude others from selling, making or using their product.
So, if you wanted to copyright your work, how would you do it? I heard that you had to post it to yourself, but I'm not sure if I believe that or not.
No, you're right, that's not true. It's a rumour that has gone round for a very long time. When you write something or create something that you haven't copied off anyone else, so it is your original idea, then it automatically becomes your intellectual property and is therefore copyrighted to you. However, if you're worried about copyright, then there are ways that you can guarantee that your work is protected. You can register it on online sites that will guarantee you copyright. You can also talk to your solicitors and get them to give you advice and maybe draw up some legal papers to protect your work. Or finally, you could go through the professional union and gain their help and advice.
Well, I never knew that. Are there any examples of people that have copyright of the work?
Well, actually, yes. There are quite a few examples. However, the main one that I can think of right now is that of a Chinese writer copyrighting J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter. All the writer did was change the photo on the front cover and change the title and a few of the words throughout the story. Although the story did not really make sense because all the writer had done was change a few words. As far as I'm aware, you can actually buy the book in some bookstores in China.
I bet that annoyed J.K. Rowling a lot. I bet that shows that there are flaws with the copyright system, that then especially if it's still being sold.
There are flaws to most systems, or loopholes as some people will call them, but you can do things about it. If you feel like your work has been copied or stolen, you can take the legal path and take the perpetrator to court to fight for the right to your work.
Very true. Anyway, moving on. What happens to someone's creative work after they die? What would happen to your scripts?
Well, if you're on your own in your work and you're not working under a company or a corporation, then the money that your product makes will go to your next of kin or whoever you leave it to in your will. However, after you have died for 70 years, your property will then become... I did it wrong again. However, after you have been dead for 70 years, your property will then become part of the public domain and your family will no longer be able to profit from it. If you are working for a company or corporation, then the product becomes part of the public domain 70 years after it was produced. So for corporations, there is no lifetime involved, only 70 years.
So if DreamWorks released a film, then it would be free in the public domain after 70 years?
Yes, movie creators are no longer allowed to profit off their film after 70 years.
I'm slightly confused, though, as to what the public domain is.
The public domain is basically where a product becomes owned by the public, not by the person or corporation that invented it. The public can use, or in the film world, then watch it without the owners profiting off them.
Is there any loopholes to the system?
Well, not exactly. However, a company has managed to use legal action to get the time extended from 70 years to now 90 years in America.
Who was that?
Disney. Disney's very famous character, Mickey Mouse, should be in the public domain by now. However, it is not. A few years ago, Disney went to court to get the time that it is kept out of the public domain extended, and it did work. However, they are now nearing that time again, and I'm sure they won't lose their precious Mickey Mouse. Therefore, I'm sure they will push the boundaries again, but we will just have to wait and see.
I'm sure you're right on that one. Disney makes so much money on that iconic figure, still, and it's over 18 years old. I'm sure they won't want to lose it to the public domain ever.
I'm sure they don't, but one day it will happen as they can't push the boundaries forever.
I'm sure they can't, but they won't go without a fight. What ethical issues could you come across in the media world?
Ethical issues can occur all the time, however they are not backed up by the law and therefore not much can be done to sort them out. Ethical issues are basically things that are done that are morally wrong. So if a big film producing company, say Warner Brothers as an example, produced a film that had bits in that would offend people, then it would be morally wrong to unjustly offend the public, especially if it is to do with racism. That film would be an ethical issue, however, most likely no legal action would be taken on it. Films are sometimes made to exploit the ethical and moral issues of today's world. For example, the most recent thing was a film called The Interviewer, directed by Seth Rogen. The film was a comedy that took the mick out of certain ethical issues in today's world, and although it was taking the mick out of it, it allowed people to see some of the moral things that the world is doing wrong. So sometimes doing morally wrong films helps wake the world up to its issues.
I would have never thought of that. I would never have thought that out of it in that way at all. I just thought films like that were meant to take the mick. I didn't realise that some of them had hidden messages and morals. So, is there ever times where ethical and legal issues can intertwine?
Well, yes. If you create something and it is copyrighted to you, and then someone steals your work and passes it off as their own, that would be a legal issue because your work has been copyrighted, but it would also be an ethical issue because it is morally wrong to steal the work of other people.
Well, that is very interesting. It's very interesting. Anyway, the next subject I want to talk to you about is the commissioning process and how you would pitch a media product like a script. So firstly, when you have created a script, how would you get in contact with a big movie company to give you the time of day to pitch to them about your idea?
Well, there is really only two things that you can do for that. The first one is wait for a company to approach you about your ideas. However, if you are a newbie scriptwriter, then it is very rare that you would get approached. Your other option is to go around to different movie producing companies and pitch to each of them, and whichever one likes your idea, they will take it on. I would always suggest pitching to more than one company, as you don't want to leave all your hope in one place. You're better off having different options.
So, before we talk about how to pitch well, can you tell us exactly what a pitch is?
Yes, of course. A pitch can either be visible or verbal or both, and it is used a lot in the film and TV industry when someone has an idea for a new production. All you have to do is present your idea in an interactive and interesting way. The goal of a pitch is to gain financing to pay for a production that you came up with.
So, once you have found a company to pitch, to what would you suggest to the public that they should include on a pitch to make it good?
Well, when creating your pitch, there are 5 key things I would say that you would need to include. Not necessarily to make it good, but so that the people you're pitching to get the key information about your idea. These 5 things are your film ideas genre, your film ideas title, your film ideas main characters, and a rough idea of who they are. So if they're a villain or a hero. And then you need a goal that your movie or your characters are meant to achieve. Then finally, the main or key obstacle that occurs in your film. So that would be your big problem that happens at the climax of your film. You don't have to pitch them in that order that I just said them in. In fact, the order doesn't really matter, but all that matters is that you include all of those things.
So, when writing a script, what would you say is the best way to tackle it?
I would definitely say start by figuring out a deadline for when your pitch needs to end. A film producer will get bored if the production drags on too long, and you don't want that to happen. Therefore, it is a key that you have an idea of how long your pitch is going to last. The next thing I would suggest is that you introduce your story and make sure you show a defined angle for your movie or script idea. After that, the best thing to do is to prove that your idea is unique and interesting and up to date with the times. Film producers always want to produce something that's interesting to watch and is unique from other things out at that time. So that's the best way to prove to them that it's a good idea. This is the part where I suggest you do some research and show evidence of that to whoever you're pitching to. You should do this to back up why your idea is a good one. Finally, and this is probably something that most people wouldn't think of, but I would make sure that you include your contact details on one of the slides so that the company can note them down and get in contact with you.
Do you ever have to put in anything about the cost of your movie?
Well, the thing is, until your movie is made, you will never be able to make a secure estimate on how much your production will cost. But it is a good idea to have a table or a graph in your pitch for the audience to see that shows a rough idea of how much you have estimated the production to cost. Because after all, they are the ones that are going to pay for it, and if they like it. So you need to give them some idea of what you're going to be spending, but you can't give them a guaranteed idea.
So, do you have any more pointers for creating a good pitch?
Yeah, I do have a few more pointers. I would always suggest using bullet points on the PowerPoint, not blocks of text. Otherwise, people you're pitching to will be more interested in reading what's being shown to them than what you're saying. If you're using a PowerPoint for your pitch, I would suggest using a lot of images, audio files, and video files to make the pitch more interactive with your audience. No matter what you do, never use too many slides and try your best not to drag the PowerPoint on too long, as that will definitely bore them. The key idea is to get to the point as fast as possible but still giving enough information. My final point would be to make sure you have clear headings for each slide so that it is clear what each slide is about, and to make sure your PowerPoint has a solid structure if you are using a PowerPoint, that is.
Do you have any pointers for people for when they are actually pitching, like how to present it well?
I guess my main advice for actually presenting is to make sure you speak clearly and loudly and you don't rush through it. Even if you're nervous and want to get it over and done with, make sure you don't rush your words as they become slurred and hard to understand for the audience.
Very good advice. Thank you, Natalie. So, how would you describe how a pitch actually happens?
Well, what normally tends to happen is you go into a room with a couple of other people, normally an editor is present, and you'll present your pitch to them and hope that they will fund your idea. There is actually a film called The Player, and the opening sequence to the film shows you lots of different pitches for films going on. If you want to get an idea of what it looks like and what happens, I suggest you watch it. It's only a couple of minutes long, but it's a really realistic replica of what it's like in the real thing.
I have actually seen that film, so I know what you mean. They really did it too well with making the pictures look like real pictures. So, you've created your pitch, you've pitched it, and the company have commissioned it. So what happens next?
Well, you go and you get your budget and you start your production, of course.
Okay, so what comes before that? Because it can't be as simple as that, can it?
It is quite simple, but no, you're right. The commissioning process comes first.
Can you please explain the different stages of the commission process and what happens in each of them?
Well, there are two ways to enter the commissioning process. The first one is to be approached by a company and ask if you will sell your idea to them. An example of someone who has gone into the commissioning process this way is the author of the book Game of Thrones, George Martin. He was approached by a company wanting to turn his book into a TV series. The other way into the commissioning process is to go around broadcasting brief productions to give to different companies until one of them likes the idea. Stage 2 of both ways are the same, and it is for the writer to develop ideas with the company and producers until you come up with a finalised idea. After that, if you are going into the process by being approached by someone, then you and your company will pitch it to a broadcaster or a studio and hope to get the green light. If you're approached by a company, then your company will pitch to a broadcaster and again hope to get the green light. The whole point of this process is to get the green light, otherwise none of the work you put in paid off, and if you don't get it.
So, once you've got the green light, does the whole process end there?
No, it doesn't. There is a lot more to it. If a company has paid for the production, they normally ask for a percentage of the profit that the production makes. In order for the production to make a profit, they have to make the film and that is the next stage, making your production.
So what is the normal routine for make a UK production?
Well, normally a production company will start off with a couple of people. They will raise a finance they will need to make the film, and then they will start hiring studios to film in. There are a lot of studios around the UK. Some of the main ones that you can hire, like Pinewood Studios, which have sites in Pinewood, Ealing and Shepperton. These studios are not like the ones you see in Hollywood. They are hired out, not owned.
So once you've filmed, does your film just automatically go into the cinema?
Well, no. Normally you have to make a deal with the distribution company, which works with the cinema chains so that the cinema chains will show your film.
So then when that's done, your film is shown in cinema and you can start to profit off of it.
Yes, but also the company that paid for your production will get a percentage of the profits.
What happens if your film doesn't profit, or is that not possible?
Unfortunately, it is possible. If a film costs a lot to make, but then it is not as popular as it was expected to be, then it is possible for it to not make any profit. If this happens, it is known as a box office bomb, and there isn't really much you can actually do about it.
Oh, I see. Well, that's not good at all. But we have to move on. Coming back to the commissioning process, what are the job roles involved in the process?
Well, the main job roles involved in the commissioning process are agents, producers, directors, writers, script editors, production executives, and commissioning editors.
So what do each of those roles do for the commissioning process?
Well, the commissioning editor has the final say. He or she will decide whether your production is a good idea and will actually go into production, or whether it won't get the funding you want. The executive producer is responsible for ensuring that the commissioner's conditions are met. The producer is the glue of the production. The producer brings all the elements of the production team together and has a significant involvement in selecting the right script. The director translates the script into a visual production on set and is in charge of all the decisions made on set. An editorial assistant provides administration support to the commissioning editor. An editorial administrator has a higher level than an editorial assistant, but does many of the same duties as I've already mentioned. A researcher looks into the topic and finds information on it, and also looks into different locations and paperwork. A script editor, as I've already said, works very closely with the script writer to help the script be as successful as possible. The script editor will not write the script, but will offer the right guidance and advice and support. A literary agent acts in the interest of the writer's fees and exposures, so basically make sure the writer of the script gets paid right. And finally, the writer is responsible for the initial script in the production.
Well, that's a lot of people and a lot of work. I never realised it was that big of a process.
Yeah, I don't think anyone realises how much work goes into it all.
Well, time is pressing on, so I want to talk about the last topic, which I know is a very important part of the script writing and film industry, and that is target audience. Firstly, why do people in the film industry bother targeting at a specific audience?
Well, different films appeal to different people, and if you aim a film at everyone, not everyone will like it. So it's better to aim it at certain people that you know will like it than risk losing profit because you aimed it at the ones that won't.
So it's all at a good target, one audience, or is it three bad parts?
Well, I guess... Wait.
So is it all good to target one audience, or is it three bad parts? So is it a good decision to target one audience, or is it a bad decision?
Well, I guess it can be bad sometimes, because if you're told a film is targeted at car lovers, then only car lovers are going to watch it. However, the film also might contain action and romance, and as well. But because people didn't know that, where it wasn't targeted at that kind of audience, it means they miss out, and which also means the production company misses out on money.
I have a feeling you might be talking about a certain film there. Fast and Furious by any chance?
Yeah, that's exactly the film I was thinking of.
Okay, so why choosing your target audience for your film? Is it possible to successfully choose a correct and specific audience?
If I'm honest, no, it's not. You can never 100% guarantee that the audience you choose will be the one that enjoys the film. A good example of that is the movie St. Trinians. The movie was originally based for teenage boys due to the sexual side to the girls. However, it turned out that a lot of young females or young female adults enjoyed the film more than boys just because of the way the girls were free and the way they acted. So this film is a good example and shows that you can't always predict your target audience right.
I never knew that film was based for boys. That's interesting because I don't know a single boy that has watched it and enjoyed it like girls do.
Yeah, me neither.
Anyway, what is thought about when choosing the target audience?
Well, everyone seems to think that target audience is an age range that we aim the film at. However, it's not. We base the target audience on many different things. For example, about lifestyle choices and how people act and do things. We also base it on their emotional status, gender, and whether their way of life can connect with the characters, as that's a key way to make a movie successful if the audience can connect well and feel the empathy for the main characters.
Wow, I never knew any of that. I just assumed that it was based on age and gender, and that's about it.
No, it's not.
So now I have heard the phrase before, but I have been confused on what it is or what it means. So what is an audience demographic?
The definition of an audience demographic is demographic information that is used in the media marketing area to classify a target audience into age, gender, race, and a lot of other categories. Demographics are broken up into bands depending on people's jobs or statuses.
Very interesting. So before...
An example I'll give you is how thriller films use demographics. Thriller movies could be aimed at anyone, and therefore they use a table with letter codes to decide what audience to aim it at. Some thrillers do not appeal to all audiences, such as psychological thrillers may not appeal to people who enjoy action thrillers, as they could be less educated on what psychological means. So if a film included a lot of people with a high income, then it would be better aimed at someone in the letter A category, as letter A category people are people like bankers and lawyers and doctors who earn a high amount of income. If the film is aimed at people that do not earn much money, it would be aimed at someone in the letter E category, which could be an unemployed person, a student, or someone that is on minimum wage.
Very interesting. So before we finish, I'd like to say a big thank you for coming in and talking to us today and telling us all about your job and what's involved.
You're welcome.
Well, that's all we have time for today, everyone, but I hope you all tune in again for my next podcast next week. Same time for now. Bye.